What if everything you know about human origins is wrong? The ancient Sumerians left behind clay tablets describing beings called the Anunnaki, gods who descended from the sky, created humans, and shaped civilization. These records, dating back to 3000 BC, tell a story so radical it challenges modern science. Were we engineered by advanced beings? Stick around, this isn't just myth. It's a mystery buried in our oldest texts. Welcome to Forgotten Scrolls. Before we dive deeper, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. You won't want to miss the secrets we're about to uncover. Today, in Anunnaki, aliens who created humans, we'll explore the most fascinating mysteries of the Anunnaki, from their portrayal in Sumerian myths to controversial theories of extraterrestrial origins, and the ways these ancient beings might have shaped humanity as we know it. The Sumerians built the world's first cities at a time when most humans still lived as hunter-gatherers. Their invention of writing changed human history forever, yet they insisted they learned it from divine beings. This civilization didn't just appear. It exploded into existence with fully formed systems of law, medicine, astronomy, and mathematics. In the baked clay of their cuneiform tablets, they left records claiming gods walked among them. One text describes the Anunnaki dividing earthly territories among themselves. Another details gods personally instructing kings. These aren't vague legends. They're specific accounts specifying who ruled which city and for how long. The symbols carved beside these texts raise more questions. A Fanfuchushanda winged disc appears in temple carvings across Mesopotamia. The Tree of Life motif emerges in their art centuries before the Bible mentions it. These images don't just decorate pottery. They mark sacred spaces where gods supposedly communicated with priests. Scholars traditionally interpret these accounts as mythology, but the precision gives pause. King lists record impossibly long reigns before the flood, exactly the pattern seen in other ancient cultures. Astronomical details align with celestial events we can still verify today. The numbers are too consistent, the patterns too deliberate. Modern translations reveal technical language about celestial movements that seems out of place in primitive religion. One tablet describes planetary orbits with accuracy that shouldn't exist in 3000 BC. Another details surgical procedures in terms so clinical they sound like medical reports. The tablets repeatedly distinguish between those who came down from above and ordinary humans. The term Anunnaki itself breaks down to mean those of royal blood or princely offspring. Their depictions show beings taller than humans, often wearing strange wristbands and carrying devices. Consider how abruptly cuneiform appears in the archaeological record. Earlier cultures used simple pictographs for counting goods. Then, suddenly, complex grammatical structures emerge, a writing system capable of philosophy, poetry, and precise historical records. The Sumerians claim the gods gave it to them. Their astronomical knowledge presents the same puzzle. They mapped the movements of planets invisible to the naked eye. Their calendar divided time mathematically. They understood concepts like the precession of equinoxes, discoveries that should have taken centuries of observation. The architecture follows this pattern. Ziggurats weren't just temples. They were precise astronomical alignments in baked brick. Their angles track celestial events. Their staircases align with solstice sunrises. The levels may represent planetary spheres, with gods assigned to each one. Mainstream archaeology explains this as cultural evolution. Yet no precursor settlements show this knowledge developing gradually. The evidence appears fully formed, exactly where and when the Sumerians said the gods instructed them. Their technology seems equally without precedent. They worked with bronze when neighboring cultures still used stone. Their irrigation systems transformed desert into farmland. Their legal codes pioneered concepts like testimony under oath. Most striking are their creation accounts. Unlike other mythologies about gods molding clay, the Sumerian version describes a multi-stage process. One text speaks of binding upon the mold the image of the gods, language some interpret as genetic manipulation. The tablets describe knowledge being deliberately given, mathematics for administration, astronomy for calendar keeping, writing for record preservation. This isn't vague divine inspiration. It's step-by-step instruction. Even skeptical scholars admit these texts present something unusual. Mythology simplifies. It doesn't include mineralogical surveys or medical symptom lists. It doesn't preserve bureaucratic records alongside religious hymns. Perhaps most telling is what the Sumerians didn't claim. Unlike later dynasties, they didn't say their kings were gods, only that they served gods. Their writings consistently describe these beings as separate, superior, and physically present. The enigma remains. If this was pure mythology, why the meticulous records? If allegory, why the technical precision? How does a civilization invent writing and immediately compose texts we're still puzzling over today? The answers may still lie buried in the thousands of untranslated tablets gathering dust in museum basements. Each one could hold another piece of this ancient puzzle that refuses to fit neatly into either history or mythology. One thing seems clear. Whatever the Sumerians witnessed, they believed completely in the reality of the Anunnaki. They staked their entire civilization on this belief. That certainty alone demands our attention. The Sumerian texts never describe the Anunnaki as supernatural spirits. They're physical beings who arrived from above, traveling in what ancient accounts call celestial boats. Tablets depict them descending from the heavens in vessels that raised a brilliant light and made thunderous sounds. These descriptions don't match typical mythological language about gods simply appearing or materializing. Two figures dominate these accounts, Enki and Enlil, brothers who command opposite forces of creation and destruction. Enki emerges as humanity's unexpected ally, a patron of knowledge and innovation. Ancient cylinder seals show him holding what appear to be measuring instruments and scientific devices. Enlil governs law and order, often portrayed wielding lightning-like weapons. Their conflict over humanity's fate forms the core of these ancient narratives. The technology attributed to these beings surpasses primitive understanding. Texts speak of divine tablets containing all knowledge, machines that flew between cities, weapons that could level mountains. One account describes Enki demonstrating a device for purifying water, a process Sumerians later perfected in their irrigation systems. Another mentions heavenly stones that illuminated temples at night. Consider the Great Flood narrative embedded in these texts. Unlike a simple act of divine punishment, the Sumerian version includes precise details. The gods debate erasing mankind, then specifically warn one human to build a survival vessel. Tablet fragments describe meteorological disturbances preceding the flood, darkening skies, shifting winds, trembling ground. Survivors report watching the disaster from orbit-like vantage points before returning with instruments to measure Earth's recovery. Some researchers argue the language used suggests observation, not imagination. When texts say the Anunnaki surveyed the lands from above, they specify altitudes and directional measurements. Accounts of their celestial journeys include time frames that correlate with astronomical cycles. The flood narrative itself follows a pattern found in scientifically verified ancient climate events. Physical descriptions further complicate matters. The Anunnaki were taller than humans, according to multiple accounts, with distinctive features emphasized in art: elongated heads, large eyes, unusual skin tones. They wore layered garments unlike local clothing, often decorated with celestial symbols. Many carvings show them carrying objects resembling modern tools, from what might be handheld scanners to devices remarkably similar to today's tablets. Their lifespans present another anomaly. Where kings' lists document human rulers reigning for decades, the Anunnaki allegedly governed for thousands of years. Some texts mention a celestial water or plant of life that maintained their vitality. Others suggest they periodically returned to their home world to renew their strength, a concept disturbingly similar to suspended animation or biological regeneration cycles. The behavior patterns recorded don't align with omniscient deities. These beings get tired, make mistakes, argue among themselves. One famous text recounts Enki getting drunk and accidentally granting humans forbidden knowledge. Another describes Anunnaki teams working in shifts to mine Earth's resources. These are workers, scientists, administrators, not all-powerful spirits. Language about their origins holds particular interest. The texts consistently place their home on another Earth, circling a distant star. Their journey here takes prolonged periods requiring suspended animation. They speak of adjusting to our gravity and atmosphere. These aren't vague heavenly realms, but concrete locations with environmental differences requiring adaptation. Artifacts reinforce this interpretation. Several cylinder seals depict the Anunnaki beside what could only be described as spacecraft, elongated vessels with propulsion flames, sometimes docked in what appear to be hangar facilities. One famous carving shows a god seated inside a chamber filled with dials and levers, surrounded by celestial bodies. Mainstream archaeology classifies these as symbolic representations, but the consistency across artifacts raises questions. Why would unrelated city-states separated by centuries all illustrate the same unlikely technology unless documenting something they witnessed? The biological references prove most striking. Texts speak of the Anunnaki becoming wearied by Earth's conditions, suffering ailments requiring special treatments. They describe medical procedures resembling gene therapy or cellular regeneration. One account details Enki creating a hybrid worker race through what sounds like cloning or genetic splicing, experiments kept in special shaping rooms. Perhaps most compelling is what happens when you filter out the mythological language. What remains reads like a technical manual: aerial surveys, resource extraction, biological engineering projects. The familiar godlike attributes seem almost decorative compared to the operational details preserved in these records. The implications unsettle easy categorization. Either ancient people hallucinated an impossibly coherent sci-fi narrative millennia before the concepts existed, or they documented interactions with beings whose advanced capabilities perfectly explain civilization's sudden emergence. There's a third possibility often overlooked. What if both interpretations contain truth? These could be records of contact with an advanced terrestrial civilization now lost to history, their technology so beyond comprehension that later generations remembered them as gods. The skyborn origins might represent forgotten aerospace capabilities rather than literal extraterrestrials. This gray area proves most fascinating. The accounts resist clean classification as either pure myth or straightforward historical record. They hover in that unsettling middle ground where the most profound mysteries always reside, just beyond the reach of comfortable explanation, yet too consistent to dismiss entirely. Whatever their nature, the Anunnaki's legacy persists in concrete ways. Their supposed gifts, writing, mathematics, urban planning, became the foundation stones of human civilization. The systems they allegedly taught still structure our world today. This lingering influence makes their origins matter far beyond academic curiosity. The question remains unavoidable. If these were mere mythological constructs, why do their described capabilities and behaviors align so unervingly with what we now recognize as advanced scientific understanding? Why does stripping away the god language leave narratives that read like corruption-free historical documents? Perhaps the answer lies in the one consistency across all ancient accounts. However they're understood, the Anunnaki were real enough to those who knew them. That certainty, etched into thousands of baked clay tablets, demands we take their descriptions seriously, wherever that investigation might lead. Zecharia Sitchin looked at the same Sumerian clay tablets as mainstream scholars and saw something entirely different. Where academics read mythology, he found technical manuals documenting extraterrestrial contact. His interpretation hinges on a planet called Nibiru, a world supposedly orbiting our sun beyond Neptune on a 3,600-year elliptical path. According to Sitchin, this is where the Anunnaki originated. Sitchin's translations describe Nibiru as a dying world. Its atmosphere needed gold particles to stabilize climate conditions. Scouting expeditions located Earth as the nearest viable source. Mining operations began in Africa approximately 450,000 years ago. Early texts speak of the Anunnaki establishing 7 functional settlements before encountering labor troubles. This is where Sitchin's theory takes its most controversial turn. The Anunnaki allegedly combined their DNA with indigenous hominids to create human workers. Ancient accounts describe an initial failed hybrid called the Lulu, followed by successful prototypes capable of speech and tool use. One cuneiform text uses language strikingly similar to genetic splicing, discussing how the gods cut and joined living materials in special chambers. Supporters point to anomalies in human DNA as potential evidence. Chromosome 2's fusion pattern differs from all other primates. Over 4% of our genome contains retroviruses not found in evolutionary cousins. Mainstream genetics attributes these to natural processes, but Sitchin's followers ask why such changes appear so abruptly in the fossil record. The gold mining claims connect to known ancient practices. South African archaeological sites show gold mining activity dating back at least 100,000 years. The Sumerian word for gold, ku, appears unusually early in their vocabulary. One tablet specifically mentions gold being lifted up to the gods rather than used for human commerce. Sitchin's planetary mechanics raise eyebrows among astronomers. His description of Nibiru's orbit contradicts current models of solar system formation. No telescope has detected such a planet, though some researchers note gravitational anomalies in the Kuiper belt that could suggest an undetected mass. The 3,600-year orbital period matches the Sumerian numerical unit, SAR, used exclusively for divine timekeeping. Linguistically, Sitchin interpreted terms differently than academics. Where scholars read gods, he saw those who came down. The Sumerian word translates as home, but also means cooled object, which Sitchin took as describing spacecraft. Even the name Anunnaki gets reinterpreted as those of royal blood rather than deities. Critics highlight glaring issues with Sitchin's methodology. He studied cuneiform as an amateur without access to complete dictionaries. Mainstream Assyriologists dispute virtually every key translation. Terms he rendered as advanced technology often have simpler alternative meanings. The same texts he cites contain obvious mythological elements that challenge literal interpretation. Yet some details resist easy dismissal. Multiple ancient cultures share the motif of gods mining earth for resources. The Aztecs claimed their deities needed gold to sustain divine powers. Egyptian texts describe gods extracting mineral wealth before human rule. Even the Bible mentions the Nephilim instructing humans in metalworking. Sitchin's timeline aligns curiously with paleontological data. He dates significant Anunnaki activity to periods corresponding with sudden human advances. The appearance of modern cognition 200,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution 12,000 years back, and the sudden emergence of civilization 6,000 years past all fit his proposed intervention points. The genetic claims contain logical gaps. If humans were engineered laborers, why give us intelligence and curiosity to eventually question our origins? Why allow the retention of reproductive compatibility with the Anunnaki themselves? Ancient texts do mention gods taking human wives, an odd allowance for a supposedly superior species. Perhaps Sitchin's greatest contribution was in connecting disparate anomalies into a single framework. Before him, scholars treated these oddities as isolated curiosities. After his work, people began seeing potential patterns across disciplines, from archaeology to genetics to mythology. The academic establishment largely dismisses Sitchin as a pseudoscientist, but his books continue selling millions of copies worldwide. This persistence suggests he tapped into some deeper human questioning about our place in the cosmos. Whether fact or fiction, his narrative offers the most comprehensive alternative explanation for humanity's sudden rise on this planet. At minimum, Sitchin forced reconsideration of how literally we should take ancient accounts. His work reminds us that civilizations recording their histories millennia ago had different conceptual frameworks than modern scholars. The truth might exist somewhere between the rigid literalism of his followers and the total allegory of traditional academia. For all its problems, the Nibiru hypothesis presents a fascinating thought experiment. It asks what changes if we consider early human history not as isolated development, but as potential interaction with advanced beings. Even wrong interpretations can sometimes point toward truths we've yet to properly articulate. The theory's endurance speaks volumes. After decades of scientific debunking, people still find Sitchin's ideas compelling. This suggests they address some deep human intuition about our past that mainstream narratives fail to satisfy. Perhaps the strongest proof lies not in any tablet or artifact, but in our persistent sense that the standard story of human origins feels incomplete. Whatever else he accomplished, Sitchin made one undeniable contribution to human thought. He demonstrated how altering one's interpretive lens can make ancient texts reveal radically different meanings. That lesson transcends any debate about Nibiru's existence. It's about the profound power of perspective in shaping our understanding of reality. The Enuma Elish presents humanity's creation as anything but divine whim. This Babylonian epic describes a precise procedure where the god Marduk mixes clay with the blood of a slain deity named Kingu. The text specifies proportions, 1 part divine essence to earthly material. Ancient astronaut theorists hear this as more than poetry. They recognize the language of genetic engineering. Unlike vague myths about gods breathing life into dust, the Enuma Elish gives operational details. It mentions the need to bind the mold and set in place the likeness. Some translations describe a 7-stage purification process for the blood component. Parallel accounts found in Assyrian versions speak of adjusting the mixture until the desired traits emerged. Mainstream scholars view this as metaphorical, but the technical consistency raises questions. The choice of materials seems significant. Clay contains silica, used today in DNA extraction. Blood carries genetic material. The slain god Kingu was specifically chosen for his rebellious traits. Some researchers note this resembles modern gene selection for desired characteristics. The text even mentions failures before achieving viable humans, mirroring trial-and-error experimentation. Consider how the epic frames humanity's purpose. We're created to bear the toil of the gods, relieving them from labor. This aligns disturbingly with Sitchin's mining operation theory. The text states workers were needed for digging canals and carrying baskets, activities verified in ancient Mesopotamian work records. Our creators wanted functional beings, not worshippers. The timing described matches geological evidence. Babylonian sources place human creation after celestial battles caused environmental disruptions. Scientific records show climate instability in the same period. Some scholars argue such details suggest the text preserves memory of real events from an unstable prehistoric era. Modern biology adds intriguing parallels. Human mitochondrial DNA shows unusual mutation patterns some researchers call accelerated. Chromosomal abnormalities appear that shouldn't exist in natural primate evolution. Mainstream science attributes these to population bottlenecks, but the coincidences intrigue alternative theorists. The Enuma Elish's preservation method matters. This wasn't folk tale passed orally for generations. It was inscribed on 7 tablets kept in Babylon's inner sanctum, read aloud once yearly by appointed priests. The ritual treatment suggests the Babylonians considered it sacred truth, not allegory. Language throughout the epic appears deliberately ambiguous. Terms translated as image could mean physical form or genetic blueprint. Breath of life might indicate artificial respiration. Even the clay description varies between tablets, sometimes ordinary earth, other times a special red dust from sacred locations. Compare this to Egyptian creation myths where gods mold humans on potter's wheels using Nile clay. Mayan texts describe gods experimenting with maize and blood mixtures. These recurring themes of hands-on biological creation span isolated cultures worldwide. Mainstream Assyriologists argue the differences prove independent invention, but the shared elements, especially the blood-clay combination, seem too specific for coincidence. Each culture uses local materials, yet maintains the same core concept: life assembled from earthly and divine components. Archaeology adds another layer. Excavations of Babylonian temples reveal what some interpret as ancient laboratories. Vessels found in priestly quarters contain residues of unknown chemicals. Cuneiform medical texts describe procedures resembling organ transplants. Knowledge impossible without advanced anatomical understanding. The Enuma Elish's lasting influence complicates interpretation. Its human creation account appears word for word in later civilizations. Alexander the Great reportedly consulted Babylonian priests about these texts shortly before his death. The persistence suggests these ideas held special significance beyond typical mythology. Alternative readings gain credibility from unexpected sources. Some modern geneticists admit humans possess DNA sequences that defy standard evolutionary explanations. Neuropsychologists note our sudden cognitive leap 70,000 years ago remains mysterious. These anomalies don't prove ancient astronaut theories, but they leave scientific doors ajar. Perhaps the most telling detail comes after humanity's creation. The gods don't simply return to heaven. They remain present, giving laws, adjusting crops, and occasionally mating with humans. This ongoing supervision doesn't match typical god worship dynamics. It resembles a long-term project with maintenance requirements. The Enuma Elish's true challenge isn't proving its literal accuracy. It's explaining why this particular creation story contains so many elements that later became scientific concepts. The text describes a material process, not mystical emergence. It accounts for failures and adjustments. Most strikingly, it presents humans as engineered solutions, not spiritual pinnacles. That perspective alone makes this ancient tablet worthy of reconsideration. Whether factual record or remarkable intuition, the Enuma Elish predicts questions we're only now equipped to ask properly. Its greatest mystery may be how clearly it speaks to modern concerns about our origins, despite being written over 4,000 years ago. The similarity of ancient stories becomes harder to dismiss as coincidence when viewed together. The Bible's Nephilim, those sons of God, who came down and mated with human women, share unsettling parallels with Sumerian accounts. Descriptions of these beings consistently mention unusual height, advanced knowledge, and celestial origins. Genesis places their arrival just before human lifespans dramatically shortened, a detail that echoes Anunnaki texts about adjusting human biology. Mesoamerican myths present their own version. The Popol Vuh describes creator gods forming humans from maize after failed attempts with wood and mud. This step-by-step creation process feels less like myth and more like an experimental log. The Mayan word for these beings, ku, doesn't just mean god. It translates to sky being. Their depictions show figures wearing what could be oxygen masks or breathing apparatuses, descending through clouds shaped like spacecraft. Egypt's god-kings follow the pattern. The Palermo stone documents early dynasties where deities physically ruled before passing kingship to humans. Gods like Thoth and Osiris possess knowledge spanning astronomy, medicine, and agriculture, skills they purportedly taught to mankind. Temple carvings show them carrying the Ankh, a symbol some interpret as an advanced device rather than a spiritual emblem. The resemblance to Sumerian depictions proves particularly striking when comparing artistic styles separated by thousands of miles. These parallels extend to architecture. Cultures with no known contact built near-identical stepped pyramids aligned to celestial events. The design appears in Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, and Mesoamerica, often with similar interior chambers and hidden passageways. The Sumerian ziggurats and Egyptian pyramids share mathematical proportions that shouldn't have been possible without shared knowledge. One explanation keeps re-emerging across these cultures: structures built according to divine specifications. Creation techniques show repeating patterns. Beyond the Babylonian blood and clay mixture, we find the Greek Prometheus molding humans from earth and water. Chinese legends speak of Nuwa forming figures from yellow clay that came to life. Aboriginal stories describe ancestral beings shaping the first people from the land. The consistent theme isn't spontaneous generation. It's hands-on assembly using local materials blended with something otherworldly. Flood narratives present the strongest global connection. Over 200 cultures have deluge myths featuring divine warnings, survival vessels, and repopulation efforts. The Sumerian version predates the biblical account, yet matches key details: a select survivor, timed release of birds, even the rainbow symbol afterward. The Cherokee tell of a water-covered earth where only certain humans were saved by sky beings. These stories appear too widespread to stem from a single cultural source. Linguistic echoes reinforce the links. The Sumerian term dinger, meaning god, uses a star symbol. The Egyptian hieroglyph for deity depicts a kneeling figure holding up the sky. Mayan glyphs for celestial beings incorporate oval shapes resembling helmets. These symbols suggest cultures separated by continents conceptualized their gods similarly, as operators from above rather than spirits within nature. Physical evidence adds another layer. Artifacts like the Dendera light bulb in Egypt and the Baghdad battery in Mesopotamia hint at lost technologies. The Antikythera mechanism proves ancient peoples could create complex geared devices. These finds don't confirm alien contact. but they challenge assumptions about what past civilizations could achieve independently. The most compelling argument lies in timeline anomalies. Civilizations worldwide show sudden leaps in knowledge without clear developmental stages. Egyptian astronomy appears fully formed in the earliest records. Mayan calendars achieve precision that took European astronomers centuries to match. Sumerian mathematics emerged with place value notation already perfected. Explanations invoking parallel evolution struggle with these coincidences. Yet mainstream scholarship maintains these similarities stem from basic human psychology, that isolated cultures naturally develop analogous myths. They argue flood stories arise from universal coastal experiences, and shared symbolism reflects common dreams or visions. But this fails to explain the technical specifics that differentiate these accounts from typical folklore. Perhaps the most telling detail is what these cultures didn't share. They traded no goods, shared no languages, and developed distinct artistic styles, making their overlapping god narratives more puzzling. Something beyond cultural diffusion seems required to explain these precise correlations across continents and millennia. The patterns resist simple explanation. Either humanity independently invented near-identical stories of skyborn creators worldwide, or these accounts preserve fragments of genuine encounters with something beyond our current understanding. The stubborn consistency of details about physical forms, technological artifacts, and biological interventions points toward the latter possibility, however unlikely it might seem. These global echoes don't prove the Anunnaki were real, but they demonstrate that the Sumerian accounts weren't unique. When cultures separated by oceans describe similar visitors performing comparable actions, it warrants deeper investigation. The collective memory of humanity seems to insist there's more to our past than we've been taught, and the evidence for that claim spans every continent on Earth. Ancient rock art tells stories without words. Across every continent, carvings and paintings depict beings descending from the sky. The Hopi people of Arizona still tell of the Kachinas, sacred spirits who once walked among humans bringing knowledge. Their petroglyphs show figures with elongated heads and large eyes emerging from disc-shaped objects. Similar images appear in Australia's Wandjina cave paintings and Norway's Alta carvings. These can't just be astronomical symbols. They show interaction between humans and the sky figures. The French cave of Lascaux holds one of the most puzzling images. Alongside bison and horses, there's a painting of a bird-headed human lying near a bull, with a staff topped by what looks like a cluster of spheres. Some researchers suggest this represents an early depiction of a spacesuit and antenna. Nearby caves contain more ambiguous figures, hybrid creatures standing upright while radiating light or aura-like projections. These images predate Sumerian tablets by thousands of years, but share core elements with much later Anunnaki descriptions. Southwestern petroglyphs reinforce the connection. The Chaco Canyon pictographs show humanoid figures floating midair, encircled by halos or surrounded by zigzag lines resembling energy fields. Zuni legends say these mark where the star people first touched Earth. Nearby sites contain carvings of beings with antenna-like protrusions, often positioned near celestial maps. Most telling are the handprint symbols found from Utah to Peru, always left in places where oral traditions say sky beings appeared to ancestors. In Val Camonica, Italy, thousands of carvings depict figures wearing what appear to be helmets and suits. Some hold devices emitting rays or lines toward human figures. Others stand beside objects resembling modern spacecraft with landing gear. The local Kamani people left no written records, but Roman historians noted their persistent stories about gods descending in flying shields. These petroglyphs date back to at least 800 BC, long before any known civilization could imagine such technology. Australian Aboriginal art presents similar mysteries. The Bradshaw paintings show thin, elongated beings wearing elaborate headdresses and carrying sophisticated tools. Local elders still recount stories of the Wandjinas, creator beings who arrived in clouds of smoke and fire. The painted figures always show large black eyes and no mouths, with halos representing clouds or helmets. Scientific analysis shows these paintings were ritually repainted for generations, suggesting continuous memory of these visitors. Then there are the mysterious clay figurines from Japan's Jomon period. These Dogu statues date back 12,000 years and show figures wearing what look like goggles, harnesses, and breathing apparatuses. Their torsos feature intricate patterns resembling modern technical schematics. Japanese folklore describes these as representations of celestial visitors who gave hunting and pottery skills to early humans. The resemblance to modern deep-sea diving suits or space gear is hard to ignore. In the Brazilian Amazon, petroglyphs near the Amazon River show beings with rays projecting from their heads, floating above groups of humans. Local tribes still recount legends of the Biporoti, a village elder who came from the sky in a thunderous explosion and eventually returned there. The carvings show this figure standing atop stepped pyramids identical to Mesopotamian ziggurats, despite the cultures having no known contact. Mainstream archaeology classifies these images as shamanic visions or astronomical markers, but the consistency across continents and eras challenges that explanation. These aren't randomly placed symbols. They cluster near ancient trading routes, water sources, and mineral deposits. Many align with solstice, sunrises, or planetary movements that require sophisticated astronomy to track. Modern researchers have identified light-induced trance states that could explain some visions. But this doesn't account for material evidence. Footprints under painted figures, tools buried beneath carvings, or mineral traces suggesting ancient use of luminescent paints that would make images glow at night. Some petroglyphs only become visible under certain light angles, suggesting advanced understanding of optics. The most compelling detail lies in what the images consistently avoid. Unlike typical religious art, they don't depict worship scenes. The human figures interact with the sky beings as equals, trading, learning, even fighting. The beings often appear pregnant or carrying infants, hinting at biological interactions beyond symbolic encounters. Perhaps these images served multiple purposes, recording actual events while instructing future generations. Some petroglyph sites contain hidden chambers beneath them where artifacts have been found, carefully arranged quartz crystals, refined metal fragments, and unidentifiable tools. These locations were clearly more than ceremonial spaces. The truth may lie between literal history and shared human experience. These petroglyphs might depict encounters with real beings whose technology appeared supernatural, or they could represent a universal psychological archetype. But the recurring details, elongated heads, descending vehicles, knowledge transfer, align too closely with Sumerian accounts to dismiss entirely. These ancient images deserve reevaluation, not as primitive art, but as potential documentation. When cultures separated by oceans and millennia depict near-identical sky beings interacting with humans, either they were directly inspired by real events, or we've underestimated humanity's ability to invent the same extraordinary story independently across the globe. The notion of Atlantis as an Anunnaki stronghold lingers at the edges of credible archaeology. Plato's original account describes a technologically advanced island civilization that suddenly vanished beneath the waves. What if this wasn't pure philosophy? Some theorists suggest his story preserved dim memories of an actual Anunnaki outpost that met catastrophe. The timing fits disturbingly well with known geological events. Around 12,000 years ago, massive floods followed the last ice age's collapse. Sea levels rose hundreds of feet, swallowing coastal areas worldwide. The Younger Dryas period saw abrupt climate shifts that could explain Plato's description of Atlantis' destruction. These same upheavals feature in Sumerian accounts of the Anunnaki fleeing earthly cataclysms. Legends from multiple cultures mention survivors of an advanced civilization spreading knowledge after their homeland sank. The Berber tribes of North Africa tell of seafarers arriving with metalworking skills. Basque oral history describes refugee teachers who spoke a strange language. Even the Maya Popolvuh references wise beings who came from across the eastern waters after great floods. The architectural puzzle deepens this connection. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey abruptly appeared with advanced stonework techniques around the time Atlantis supposedly fell. Malta's megalithic temples display construction methods similar to alleged Atlantean descriptions. Most telling are the similarities between Plato's circular city plans and early Mesopotamian ziggurat designs, both featuring concentric rings of water and land. Maritime evidence suggests something unusual occurred in ancient times. Underwater structures near Bimini and Japan's Yonaguni show stone formations with right angles and passages that challenge natural explanations. While mainstream science attributes these to geological processes, their proximity to ancient trade routes raises questions. Could these be remnants of actual island outposts rather than the mythical continent itself? The knowledge dispersion theory holds particular interest. After the alleged Atlantis collapse, advanced agricultural techniques suddenly appear in multiple locations. Bronze metallurgy emerges simultaneously in disconnected regions. Navigation methods exceed what should have been possible for early seafarers. This pattern aligns with Anunnaki texts describing surviving watchers continuing their mission after disasters. Genetic studies add another layer. Certain haplogroups show unusual distribution patterns that conflict with standard migration models. Some Pacific Islander DNA contains markers suggesting prolonged isolation followed by sudden contact with advanced groups. While inconclusive, these anomalies fit scenarios where remnants of a sophisticated culture intermingled with local populations. Ancient texts reference this directly. Babylonian tablets mention the 7 sages from beyond the sea, who civilized Mesopotamia after the flood. Egyptian priests told Solon about a pre-dynastic golden age before catastrophe struck. The Hindu Manu legend describes a great teacher surviving global floods to restart civilization. These accounts all share core elements with Plato's Atlantis narrative. Critics rightly point out the lack of physical proof for any continent-sized civilization. But the Atlantean connection need not require a lost supercontinent. Smaller island bases matching Plato's size estimates could have existed in strategic locations. The Azores Plateau shows evidence of past land above water. Sardinia's Nurag towers demonstrate advanced coastal engineering from otherwise primitive cultures. The geological record confirms that dramatic changes occurred when Atlantis supposedly sank. Ice core samples reveal sudden climate shifts around 11,600 years ago. Ocean sediment layers contain iridium spikes, suggesting cosmic impacts. These could explain Plato's description of earthquakes and floods wiping out an advanced civilization practically overnight. The Anunnaki angle provides a plausible framework for these disparate clues. If Atlantis represented their primary earthly headquarters, its destruction would explain why later cultures only inherited fragments of advanced knowledge. It accounts for the sudden appearance of similar technologies across separated regions. Most importantly, it offers a reason why Anunnaki activity seems to sharply decline after this period in most accounts. This theory faces obvious skepticism. No verified Atlantean artifacts exist. The historical chain between Plato and any actual events remains speculative. Yet the persistence of these stories across civilizations demands consideration. When paired with Anunnaki narratives, they suggest a possible historical core beneath the mythological layers. Modern searches for Atlantis increasingly focus on regions matching Plato's geographic clues near the Mediterranean. Underwater scans have revealed potential man-made structures off Spain's coast and near Cyprus. These sites show rectangular formations and what appear to be ceremonial complexes now submerged. While inconclusive, they demonstrate that a real catastrophe could have destroyed coastal cities matching Atlantis' description. The ultimate question isn't whether Atlantis existed as Plato described, but whether its legend preserves genuine memories of an Anunnaki center lost to rising seas. The pieces fit together suspiciously well: the timing, the technological leaps, the flood myths across cultures. Either this represents an extraordinary series of coincidences, or we're glimpsing fragments of a forgotten chapter in human development. The Atlantis connection remains speculative but fascinating. If nothing else, it provides a compelling explanation for how Anunnaki technology and knowledge could have spread globally despite their apparent departure. Whether literally true or symbolically meaningful, this sunken city concept continues to resurface in human consciousness for reasons we may only fully understand when we finally piece together our complete past. What makes this idea endure isn't just the romance of lost civilizations. It's the way this possible Atlantean connection elegantly explains several anomalies in human history: the sudden knowledge bursts, the global flood myths, and the apparent withdrawal of the Anunnaki from direct human affairs. The idea that the Anunnaki never truly left never quite disappears. Conspiracy circles whisper about hidden overlords pulling strings from behind global events, while ancient astronaut theorists point to mysterious figures appearing throughout history bearing uncanny knowledge. The question lingers: if these beings engineered us once, would they really abandon their creation entirely? Some argue the evidence surrounds us in plain sight. Certain think tanks and secretive organizations use symbols identical to Sumerian depictions of Anunnaki technology. High-ranking officials sometimes reference external entities when discussing geopolitical strategies. Modern tech breakthroughs happen suddenly and suspiciously, with prototypes appearing fully formed without clear developmental stages, a pattern that echoes humanity's sudden leap forward in ancient times. Others believe the interaction became more subtle. Religious visions and UFO sightings might represent continued monitoring rather than direct contact. Crop circles display geometric patterns matching cuneiform mathematical constructs. Some military radar anomalies show flight patterns that defy known physics, yet mimic descriptions of Anunnaki celestial boats in ancient texts. Sumerian tablets mention the Anunnaki establishing long-term observation protocols before departing. They supposedly left behind interfaces, objects or locations where communication remained possible under specific conditions. The Bible's Ark of the Covenant fits this description disturbingly well, a device requiring precise handling that could both transmit knowledge and unleash destruction. Similar relics appear in Tibetan monasteries and Mesopotamian excavation sites, all allegedly capable of channeling divine voices. Financial systems raise another red flag for conspiracy theorists. The global economy operates on principles first developed in ancient Mesopotamia: interest calculations, sealed contracts, even the concept of debt as a binding force. The original Sumerian banking temples were dedicated to Anunnaki deities. This could be cultural evolution, or it might suggest certain economic structures were designed to serve a purpose beyond human benefit. Genetics offers potential clues. Some researchers identified DNA sequences that serve no apparent biological function, so-called junk DNA, that comprises nearly 98% of our genome. A few studies suggest these strands activate under specific electromagnetic conditions. Ancient astronaut proponents ask whether this could be dormant programming waiting for external triggers. Mainstream science dismisses this, but the question remains unanswered. The space exploration timeline seems suspiciously accelerated. Humanity went from rudimentary rockets to planned Mars missions within decades. Classified aerospace projects reportedly use physics models that appear in no scientific literature. The sudden push for asteroid mining echoes ancient accounts of the Anunnaki's original mission. Either we're unconsciously following patterns from our creators, or someone's still guiding the trajectory. Then there are the recurring figures throughout history, mysterious advisors appearing at pivotal moments. The Renaissance had its unexplained polymaths who transformed multiple fields overnight. Certain influential scientists reported visions or dreams that led to breakthroughs. Even modern tech visionaries sometimes describe their ideas as downloaded rather than invented. Climate change presents another possible connection. The Anunnaki texts describe adjusting Earth's environment to suit their needs. Our current planetary alterations follow patterns that could theoretically make conditions more hospitable for a species preferring higher temperatures and different atmospheric compositions. This might be coincidence, or careful terraforming resumed after millennia. Those who believe in continued presence point to elite bloodlines allegedly tracing back to Sumerian god kings. Certain families have maintained disproportionate influence across centuries while displaying uncommonly consistent physical traits: height, skull shape, even reported blood types matching rare classifications. Genealogy researchers note unusual gaps and redactions in these lineages' historical records. Skeptics counter that humanity's technological adolescence explains these phenomena naturally. We're reaching the stage where our own creations might appear supernatural to past civilizations. The patterns we perceive as external guidance could simply be humanity encountering its own growing capabilities. Yet some details resist easy explanation. Ancient texts worldwide predict a future return of the sky gods at humanity's most advanced stage. Multiple cultures positioned their star maps and monuments to align with celestial events millennia in their future, events now approaching. The mathematical precision involved suggests intentional markers rather than wishful thinking. The most chilling possibility involves our digital networks. Some theorists suggest the internet perfectly replicates ancient descriptions of the Anunnaki's knowledge grid, a system where information flows instantly across distances while being meticulously recorded. If true, our greatest tool might serve purposes we don't yet comprehend. Whether myth or reality, the question of ongoing Anunnaki influence forces us to examine who, or what, might be shaping civilization's direction. The ancients left warnings about cycles of control and awakening encoded in their texts and monuments. Our task is deciding whether to dismiss these as fantasy or recognize them as the most important puzzle we've yet to solve. The Great Flood story appears in nearly every ancient culture, but the Sumerian version stands apart. Their tablets describe the Anunnaki themselves triggering the catastrophe, then debating whether to save humanity. The god Enki secretly warns a human named Ziggurats to build a survival vessel, details that predate the biblical Noah story by centuries. What makes this account unique isn't just its age, but its technical precision about the flood's cause and aftermath. Geological evidence suggests something monumental happened around 12,000 years ago. Ice core samples from Greenland show sudden temperature spikes. Sea levels rose 400 feet in just decades. Sediment layers across multiple continents contain traces of massive flooding. This wasn't gradual climate change. It was a cataclysm that would have devastated early civilizations. The Sumerians placed their flood story specifically during the Younger Dryas period, when science confirms extreme climate shifts occurred. Sitchin connected this disaster to Nibiru's orbit. He proposed the planet's gravitational pull disrupted Earth's crust during its approach, triggering earthquakes and tidal waves. The Sumerians described the floodwaters behaving unusually, not just heavy rains, but the foundations of the Earth breaking apart. Mainstream science rejects Nibiru's existence, but mathematicians note our solar system's outer orbits remain imperfectly mapped. The periodic catastrophe theory continues circulating because our own climate models still struggle to explain how quickly the last ice age ended. Across the world, flood stories share eerie consistencies. The Mayan Popol Vuh describes dark clouds covering the sky before waters rose. Greek legends speak of Poseidon shaking the earth. Siberian tribes recount their ancestors surviving on floating mounds while the world drowned. The sheer geographic spread suggests collective trauma rather than shared imagination. Many accounts include identical elements: warning dreams, animals preserved in vessels, guided navigation to new lands. The Sumerian version adds disturbing details absent elsewhere. Tablets describe the Anunnaki watching the destruction from orbit before returning to measure the damage. Another text claims they used sky beams to locate surviving human settlements after waters receded. The flood wasn't just punishment, it was potentially a reset, an attempt to control a human population that had grown beyond expectations. Some tablets even suggest factional conflict among the gods about whether extermination went too far. Modern archaeology confirms many early cities show destruction layers consistent with massive flooding. The ancient city of Ur contains 8 feet of clean silt between habitation levels, evidence it was completely submerged. Similar flood deposits appear at other Mesopotamian sites dated to roughly the same period. The geological record matches the literary one uncomfortably well. What separates myth from potential history becomes blurrier when examining flood survival techniques. Multiple cultures describe waterproofing methods using bitumen, exactly the substance Sumerian texts specify for Ziggurats' boat. The dimensions given for the vessel match ancient reed ship designs still used in Iraq today. These practical details feel less like allegory and more like preserved emergency protocols. The flood's aftermath features another anomaly: sudden agricultural advances. Cultivation appears almost simultaneously across post-flood societies. Ancient texts describe the Anunnaki redistributing seeds and teaching irrigation to survivors. Genetic studies show certain crops experienced artificial selection pressure around this exact time. This isn't the gradual development science expects. It's as if surviving humans received outside assistance. Perhaps most telling are the astronomical references surrounding these flood accounts. Mayan dates, Egyptian zodiacs, and Babylonian star charts all place the disaster during specific celestial alignments. The Sumerians tied it to Nibiru's approach. Either ancient cultures independently imagined similar cosmic events, or they recorded actual astronomical triggers for Earth's violent climate shifts. The flood story resists simple classification because it operates on multiple levels. As theology, it explores divine judgment. As geology, it matches known catastrophic events. As potential history, it suggests an intervention point in human development. The most plausible explanation may be that ancient people experienced devastating floods and interpreted them through their understanding of the beings who shaped their world. Rather than dismissing these accounts as pure fiction, we might consider them mythologized records of real disasters. The consistent details, survival strategies, environmental changes, divine involvement could represent humanity's first attempts at historical documentation. What we call the Great Flood myth may actually be our ancestors' way of preserving warnings about climate volatility and celestial cycles that could one day repeat. This changes how we view the Anunnaki narrative. If their flood story encodes actual survival knowledge, perhaps other mythological details contain similar practical wisdom. The gods' debated decision to spare humanity takes on new meaning, not just as theological commentary, but as a reminder that even creators can disagree about their creation's fate. The Sumerians may have been telling us something crucial about resilience in the face of planetary upheaval. The human genome contains anomalies that challenge standard evolutionary timelines. While mainstream genetics shows clear similarities between human and primate DNA, certain features don't follow expected patterns. The fusion of chromosome 2, present in all humans but absent in other primates, occurred suddenly in evolutionary terms. This structural change should have taken millions of years to stabilize across a population. Instead, it appears universally in our species with no transitional forms. Sitchin's Anunnaki theory proposes an explanation for these gaps. Ancient Sumerian texts describe a multi-stage creation process for humans, with early failures before viable hybrids emerged. The language used suggests biological engineering. Terms like binding the image and mixing the clay resonate oddly with modern genetic manipulation techniques. These accounts claim the Anunnaki initially created worker beings that couldn't reproduce, then later modified them to include that capability. Modern genetics has identified peculiarities in human reproduction that align uncomfortably with this narrative. The human placenta contains unique genetic markers not found in other mammals. Some researchers argue this organ developed too rapidly through natural selection, showing characteristics that would typically require much longer evolutionary periods. The abrupt appearance of this biological innovation coincides roughly with when archaeological evidence shows Homo sapiens beginning to dominate other hominid species. Then there's the mystery of junk DNA, the 98% of our genome that doesn't code for proteins. While scientists once dismissed this as evolutionary debris, recent studies show some portions regulate gene expression in ways we're just beginning to understand. Certain patterns within this non-coding DNA appear mathematical rather than biological, with repeating sequences that resemble information storage systems. Ancient astronaut theorists suggest this could represent intentional genetic markers or even coded messages from our supposed creators. The human brain presents another puzzle. Our prefrontal cortex developed rapidly compared to other mammals. This sudden cognitive leap enabled abstract reasoning, language, and technological innovation, traits far beyond what survival pressures would typically necessitate. Primatologists note that chimpanzees haven't shown comparable intellectual advancements despite sharing nearly identical basic genetics. The difference appears in regulatory genes that determine brain development timing, precisely where an engineered modification would have maximum effect. Mainstream science attributes these anomalies to population bottlenecks and accelerated natural selection. But the combination of unusual genetic features presents a statistical problem. The odds of so many coordinated mutations occurring independently stretch credibility for some researchers. When combined with the Sumerian creation texts describing similar genetic interventions, the alternative explanation gains circumstantial weight. Recent discoveries about horizontal gene transfer further complicate the picture. Bacteria exchange genetic material across species barriers, demonstrating that nature has mechanisms for sudden genetic alterations. Some studies suggest human DNA contains viral inserts that likewise came from external sources. While this remains controversial, it proves genetic modification occurs naturally, raising questions about whether more directed versions might be possible. Skeptics rightly point out there's no direct evidence of alien DNA manipulation. No geneticists have identified unnatural sequences that would prove external tampering. But supporters counter that sufficiently advanced engineers would leave no obvious traces. Their modifications would use existing biological components. The debate hinges on whether we interpret genetic anomalies as evolutionary quirks or deliberate design features. The timing of these genetic changes aligns with archaeological evidence of civilization's sudden emergence. Agricultural knowledge, city-building techniques, and astronomical understanding materialized with startling rapidity. Genetic and cultural evolution typically proceed gradually. Yet human history shows discontinuous leaps that standard models struggle to explain. Ancient texts worldwide describe creator beings with biological knowledge. The Dogon tribe preserves astronomical data they claim came from amphibious teachers. Sumerian tablets detail medical procedures implying advanced anatomy knowledge. These accounts all feature beings who understood life's building blocks in ways that predate modern science by millennia. Perhaps most telling is what our genome doesn't contain. Compared to other species, humans lack certain expected genetic diversity. Our worldwide population shows less variation than a single troop of chimpanzees. This genetic uniformity suggests a relatively recent bottleneck followed by rapid expansion, a pattern that matches ancient accounts of limited human prototypes being mass-produced. The genetic engineering debate ultimately hinges on interpretation. Either humanity's DNA contains remarkable coincidences that propelled us to dominance through sheer chance, or something in our past directed that development. While science rightly demands extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, the Anunnaki narrative provides a framework that makes unexpected genetic patterns suddenly make sense. Until we can fully explain every aspect of our genome's development, this theory will continue offering alternative explanations for our biological uniqueness. What makes these ideas compelling isn't just the gaps in current knowledge, but how neatly ancient texts seem to predict modern genetic discoveries. The Sumerian descriptions of stepwise human creation increasingly resemble scientific protocols. Whether this represents prescient mythology or preserved history remains undetermined. But our DNA clearly holds more secrets about our origins than we've yet uncovered. Human civilization emerged with impossible speed. The Sumerians invented writing, mathematics, and urban planning almost overnight by historical standards. Their earliest texts already show sophisticated astronomy tracking planets invisible to the naked eye. This wasn't gradual development. It was like someone flipped a switch. Ziggurats demonstrate this puzzle perfectly. These stepped pyramids appeared fully formed with precise astronomical alignments. Their bricks show advanced cement-making techniques. The structures functioned as both temples and celestial observatories. Yet we find no experimental prototypes, just sudden perfection. Sumerian tablets claim the gods provided the blueprints. The same pattern appears in their irrigation systems. Canals stretch for miles with calculated gradients that prevent erosion. Sluice gates control water flow using principles of hydrodynamics. These aren't primitive ditches, they're engineered solutions that would challenge modern planners. Ancient texts say the Anunnaki taught these methods after the Great Flood. Mathematics presents another leap. The Sumerians used a base, 60 system still seen in our clocks and circles. They calculated square roots and algebraic equations. Their tablets contain multiplication tables and compound interest formulas. For context, their mathematical knowledge exceeded medieval Europe's until the Renaissance. Consider their medicine. Cuneiform medical texts list symptoms and treatments systematically. They describe antiseptic procedures using alcohol centuries before germ theory. Some tablets detail herbal remedies with active ingredients confirmed by modern science. The precision suggests clinical observation, not folk wisdom. Mainstream scholars attribute this to cultural innovation. They point to the Fertile Crescent's geography forcing social complexity. But geography doesn't explain technical knowledge. Farming villages doesn't automatically produce astrophysics. Something accelerated this process beyond natural societal evolution. The knowledge transfer appears deliberate. Texts describe gods teaching in specific sequences, astronomy first, then mathematics, then architecture. This mirrors modern educational scaffolding. The Epic of Gilgamesh even mentions a tablet of wisdom, containing all essential knowledge given to humanity. Metalworking follows the same pattern. Sumerians smelted bronze when neighbors used stone. Their artifacts show advanced alloy mixtures and casting techniques. Later Babylonian texts describe purification processes that chemists confirm would work. The Anunnaki were consistently described as metallurgists who extracted the essence from ores. The calendar system reveals more anomalies. Sumerians divided time with precise lunar and solar calculations. Their year had 360 days, a number matching their base, 60 math system. They adjusted for discrepancies using intercalary months. This systematic time-keeping appears instantly in their earliest records. Legal codes present another puzzle. The Code of Uarnemu predates Hammurabi by centuries, but shows refined legal concepts. It distinguishes between civil and criminal cases. It standardizes weights and measures. Such complex jurisprudence normally develops slowly through case law, not by royal decree. Artistic progression also defies norms. Early Sumerian statues show remarkable anatomical accuracy. Music theory appears in tablets explaining harmonic intervals. The lyre from Uar contains soundbox physics that enhance acoustic resonance. These aren't crude first attempts. They're polished final products. Perhaps most telling is what the Sumerians wrote about their own learning. They credit specific gods for specific skills. Enki taught water management. Nisaba gave writing. Ninurta provided the plow design. The descriptions read like faculty assignments at a technical school rather than mythic allegory. Critics argue these advancements developed elsewhere first, but excavations show Sumer leading neighboring regions by centuries. Trading could explain material goods, not abstract knowledge. Languages and cultures borrowed from Sumer, not the reverse. The direction of influence is clear. The speed of adoption strains credibility. Usually societies resist foreign ideas. Yet Sumerian knowledge spread rapidly to Egypt, Indus Valley, and beyond with minimal resistance. It's as if people recognized these ideas weren't arbitrary, they just worked better. Modern analogies might help. Imagine giving smartphones to 18th century scientists. They'd reverse engineer applications while struggling with underlying principles. The Sumerians display similar gaps, mastering complex applications while showing little curiosity about foundational theories. The knowledge appears optimized for civilization building. Astronomy enables agriculture. Math supports architecture. Writing preserves laws. Medicine maintains populations. It's a curated toolkit, not random discoveries. Someone selected what humans needed to establish cities. This brings us to the core question. Could humans have developed all this independently? Possibly. But the coordinated emergence across disciplines suggests directed learning. Whether gods, aliens, or lost precursors, something accelerated our development in ways we still don't fully understand. The Sumerians themselves had no doubt. Their tablets state plainly that civilization was a gift, not an invention. In the absence of contrary evidence, their testimony deserves consideration. After all, they were there. We're just interpreting fragments they left behind. The concept of a hidden planet in our solar system has captivated astronomers and conspiracy theorists alike. Zecharia Sitchin's interpretation of Sumerian tablets introduced Nibiru as a massive world orbiting beyond Neptune with a 3,600-year elliptical path. This hypothetical planet supposedly enters the inner solar system rarely, causing gravitational disruptions during its passage. The idea stems from Sitchin's translation of cuneiform texts describing celestial movements that mainstream archaeology interprets as mythology. Modern astronomy presents serious challenges to Nibiru's existence. No telescope survey has detected such a planet despite comprehensive mapping of our solar system. The orbit Sitchin described would violate known celestial mechanics. Such an elongated path should have ejected the planet entirely or sent it crashing into the sun. Infrared scans that identified distant dwarf planets like Sedna found no traces of an object matching Nibiru's supposed size and trajectory. Yet some anomalies keep the debate alive. The Kuiper Belt shows unexpected gravitational perturbations that suggest an unseen mass. Astronomers originally proposed Planet X to explain irregularities in Uranus' orbit before discovering Neptune. While most now attribute these effects to collective small objects, a few researchers speculate about an undetected planetary body. The WISE telescope's failure to locate Nibiru didn't completely eliminate the possibility of smaller rogue planets in extreme orbits. The timeline presents another puzzle. Nibiru's proposed 3,600-year orbit matches the Sumerian SAR time unit precisely. This numerical consistency seems unlikely as coincidence. Ancient astronomical records from multiple cultures reference long-term celestial cycles that align suspiciously with this period. Either the Anunnaki had remarkably advanced orbital calculations, or the number represents something besides planetary mechanics. Climate evidence adds another dimension. Earth's geological record shows cyclical catastrophic events roughly every 3,600 years. Sediment layers reveal sudden sea level changes, extinction waves, and impact craters clustered at intervals matching Nibiru's alleged orbit. Mainstream science attributes these to solar cycles and asteroid impacts, but the pattern invites speculation about recurring celestial influences. Modern planet hunters have shifted focus to possible undiscovered worlds in our solar system's outer reaches. Hypotheses about Planet 9 describe a distant, massive world with a 10,000+ year orbit. While this differs from Nibiru's proposed path, it demonstrates astronomers still expect to find unknown planets. The difference lies in scale. Scientific proposals suggest smaller, colder bodies, not the habitable world described in ancient texts. Sitchin's supporters point to artifacts as potential proof. A Babylonian astronomical tablet shows celestial arrangements some interpret as including Nibiru. Sumerian cylinder seals depict what appear to be planetary systems with additional bodies. These could represent mythological scenes, but the precision of astronomical details gives pause. When ancient star charts align with modern knowledge, it raises questions about their other unusual elements. The controversy ultimately hinges on interpretation. Sitchin read Sumerian texts as technical documents rather than myths. Where scholars see gods and symbols, he saw astronauts and technology. Without original Anunnaki testimony, we can't definitively prove or dismiss his planetary claims. The absence of physical evidence for Nibiru weighs heavily against the theory, but humanity keeps finding celestial surprises that revise our solar system maps. Perhaps the most telling aspect is how the Nibiru debate mirrors ancient astronomical discoveries. Early stargazers tracked planets before understanding their nature. We may be in a similar position, observing gravitational effects we can't yet fully explain. Whether these point to Nibiru, rogue planets, or undiscovered phenomena remains an open question at astronomy's frontier. The search continues through both scientific and alternative lenses. NASA's ongoing surveys of the outer solar system methodically eliminate possibilities, while amateur astronomers scrutinize anomalies. This parallel investigation reflects humanity's enduring fascination with what might lie beyond our current knowledge. The Nibiru hypothesis persists because it represents the possibility that ancient civilizations knew something about our solar system that we're still rediscovering. Until definitive proof emerges, Nibiru will remain suspended between myth and potential reality, a celestial ghost that challenges our assumptions about both ancient knowledge and modern astronomy. Whether ultimately proven fact or fiction, the theory has already accomplished one undeniable feat, making us look deeper into both dusty cuneiform tablets and the dark reaches of space with renewed curiosity. The truth may be hiding in plain sight, encoded in artifacts we've yet to fully decipher or floating in the cosmic dark beyond Neptune. Whatever the outcome, the Nibiru question reminds us how much remains unknown about both our ancestors' understanding and our solar system secrets. This dual mystery ensures the debate will continue every bit as persistently as Nibiru itself supposedly circles our sun. The Anunnaki myth endures because it scratches an itch modern science can't reach. We live in an age of genetic engineering and space exploration, yet we still can't fully explain human consciousness or our sudden leap to civilization. The idea that advanced beings guided our development offers answers to questions that keep us awake at night. Everyone wonders where we came from. Evolution explains biology, but leaves gaps about consciousness. Religion provides meaning, but conflicts with evidence. The Anunnaki narrative bridges these divides. It presents creation not as divine whim or blind chance, but as deliberate engineering. This resonates in an era where we're beginning to redesign life ourselves. The theory unsettles as much as it excites. Being someone else's experiment challenges human exceptionalism. Yet there's comfort in believing our flaws aren't intrinsic failures, but unfinished design. Ancient texts describe the Anunnaki tweaking prototypes, a concept familiar in our age of software updates and product recalls. Psychologists note how these theories flourished during periods of rapid change. The Industrial Revolution spawned spiritualism. The space age birthed ancient astronaut theories. Today, as AI and biotechnology advance uncontrollably, we project our anxieties onto the past. The Anunnaki represent both our fears of created intelligence and our hopes for cosmic kinship. The story structure makes it stick. Good narratives need conflict. The Anunnaki had internal power struggles. They require flawed characters, Enki rebels to help humanity. Modern myths like superhero films use the same templates. This tale has endured 4,000 years because it follows storytelling rules we're wired to recognize. Modern discoveries keep the theory alive. Every time archaeologists uncover advanced ancient technology or geneticists find unexplained DNA patterns, it fuels speculation. The Anunnaki narrative adapts easily to new evidence. It's less a fixed story than an interpretive framework. This flexibility lets it outlast debunked details. The theory thrives at science's edges. Dark matter and quantum physics have made the universe stranger than we imagined. If 95% of reality consists of unknowable dark energy, who's to say intelligent life couldn't have visited Earth? Once fringe ideas gain traction, when established theories can't explain anomalies. Social media amplifies these ideas differently than past eras. Viral content favors bold, simple narratives over nuanced debate. The Anunnaki story reduces human history to a compelling soundbite. We were created to mine gold. This simplicity travels farther than complicated academic papers about cultural evolution. The internet also connects disparate anomalies. An odd artifact in Iraq, a strange cave painting in India, a questionable DNA study. Alone, they're curiosities. Together, they form a pattern the Anunnaki theory explains. Confirmation bias does the rest, making connections feel inevitable rather than coincidental. Ancient astronaut theories flip traditional power structures. If human elites aren't the apex intelligence, it democratizes knowledge. This appeals in an age of growing inequality and distrust of institutions. The idea that truth comes from outside established channels has powerful allure when systems fail. The myth also answers childhood wonderings. Most kids ask who made them. When told, your parents, they ask who made parents, and so on. The Anunnaki provide an endpoint to this infinite regression. Intelligent designers who themselves arose naturally. This mental satisfaction outweighs evidentiary shortcomings for many. Modern genetics makes the idea plausible in ways previous generations couldn't imagine. We now edit DNA routinely. Seeing CRISPR scientists play God makes the idea of ancient genetic engineers feel less absurd. The technological sublime has caught up to the myth. Religious parallels help the theory spread. The Anunnaki story incorporates elements from multiple faiths: creation, flood, divine knowledge. This lets people graft the theory onto existing beliefs rather than replace them entirely. It's heresy that feels like deeper orthodoxy. Ultimately, these ideas persist because the alternative is unsettling. If humanity's rise was accidental, our future may be purposeless. The Anunnaki suggest we're part of someone else's plan. That may be fiction, but it's more comforting than facing the void alone. We'll likely keep retelling this story until we find better answers, or until the designers return to clarify. The Anunnaki mystery forces us to reconsider everything we know about human origins. Thousands of clay tablets speak of beings who shaped our species, and whether those accounts hold shards of truth or stand as our oldest myths, the questions they raise refuse to fade. If anything we explored here resonates or unsettles you, leave your thoughts below. Were the Anunnaki gods, visitors from the stars, or a story we invented to explain the unexplainable? If you want more investigations like this, hit subscribe and smash that like button to help more people discover these forgotten truths. Check the description for sources and further reading. And if you're hungry for more mysteries, watch our playlist on ancient civilizations next. Thanks for diving into the past with Forgotten Scrolls. Until the next revelation, keep searching the forgotten scrolls.